Good afternoon, guys. My name is Brittni Charles. I'm a civil engineering student with the Department of Engineering at UL Lafayette, and I'm here with Mr. Mark Dubroc this afternoon. Good morning, Mark. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, hey, Brittni. It's nice to meet you this afternoon. My name is Mark Dubroc. I'm a civil engineer. I've been a civil engineer my entire adult life. I worked 14 years for my father's firm. That was an established Lafayette firm, Sellers, Dubroc and Associates, for 14 years. And then Dad and I and another engineer formed Dubroc Engineering when I was 36 years old. And I ran that company for basically 23 years. And then in an active endeavor, or in an active new endeavor, I accepted the job as Public Works Director for Lafayette Consolidated Government under Joel Robideau's administration. It was a paradigm shift for me. I had to sell my interest in my company for conflicts of interest. I couldn't be both. Yeah. And so I did that. I was approaching, a long-term end of a career, and this was a really cool opportunity, I thought, to do something directly for the community. As civil engineers, we always work for the betterment of our community, but to me this was going to be a direct opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, Joel decided not to run again, and the next guy had new ideas, so I ended up back in the private sector, and I was very, very fortunate to be offered a position with Fenstermaker in a kind of unique role. I'm sort of just the old guy down the hall is my title, I think. And but I enjoy working with the young engineers, and at the present time I'm kind of spearheading a quality control program that we're trying to establish corporation-wide, departmental-wide, engineering department.
Okay.
So that's it in a nutshell.
That was very interesting profile. So while you were introducing yourself, I actually had a question before I got into these questions. Did you know that you were going to go into civil engineering because of your dad's company?
Yes, and that's a good question, because I grew up in the business. Mm-hmm. I was surveying part-time during the summers at 14 years old. I would survey for the summer, and then winter, when we'd get off high school for winter break, I would go put a few hours in on the survey crews. And then in high school, I guess about, that was high school, but senior year, junior year, I ran their production department of printing and making copies and being a file clerk, things like that. I'd go after school. But so I grew up in the business. I really had a sense of what it was about, how it worked, and what we were accomplishing as engineers. If you go back and look at various records in other engineers' office, you'll see a lot of Sellers Dubroc plans for a lot of roadways that you drive on every day. Ambassador Caffrey, Collie Saloon. I designed Veyro a few years ago when that project got built. So it's cool stuff.
It is. So did they teach a surveying course whenever you attended school?
So I went to the bigger school down to the east of us, and I didn't go here. Dad was an alum of UL or USL. Okay. Actually, Dad was the last class of SLI in 1960. And but we always had a close affinity to the UL engineering department, and have long done that. So what was your question about?
Did you have a surveying course when you were in college?
Yes, that was a critical part of civil engineering education, was surveying, because in those days surveying and civil engineering were not separate. Okay. And now it's professionally separate. You have a separate license for land surveying and for civil engineering. So I was really excited about surveying. I always loved surveying the most. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, when they enacted the laws that made surveying a separate profession, I didn't have the educational background. And then get caught up in life, and I didn't have time to go back to school with 3 kids and a new business. So I never actually got my surveyor's license. And it's ironic, because I really, truly enjoy surveying, certain aspects of surveying, more than anything else. But so I did take 2 basic courses of surveying, but by the time I got to college, I pretty much knew everything there was to be taught in the surveying class, except some of the note-taking and things like that. But I was an instrument man at 18, so I knew how to run the instrument.
So would you say that the course was similar to what you had to do in the actual field? In
surveying, yes. Okay. Yes, the surveying classes were very much oriented to your field work and your field experience.
Okay, so
But now I don't know what the current curriculum does, because truly land surveying the field work is one aspect of it, but the key part of land surveying is how to interpret the boundaries as they exist in the field and as they exist on the records, and to be able to discern what are the real boundaries of a particular property. Sometimes it's not a clear-cut decision, and so you need to use your professional judgment to make those calls.
Okay, and you get that from the experience from actually
Absolutely.
being in the field. Okay, so with that, what do you wish more people knew about civil engineering?
About civil engineering in particular, I wish they knew how the work that we do as a profession permeates their entire life. And civil engineering, if you think about the word civil, what does that mean? Well, that's civilization.
Yeah.
And so everything we do affects the physical well-being of the public and the general population. And that's what I wish people realized, how many things in their life. You think about their sewer and their water, their streets, their drainage, all of that is civil engineering. And I know I'm leaving a lot of other things out, but that's what's really cool about civil engineering. And so, yeah, so I can tell you it's pretty exciting when you finish a big highway project and you drive down it the first time.
Yeah, cool. It was even nice finishing a highway project in class.
Yeah.
So yeah. I can imagine in
and
my
I guess
life.
that would be a fictitious project, huh? But it's extremely rewarding. And you know, in my permutation as a civil, we were a design consulting firm. And so we always saw it literally from conception. Sometimes we were the ones that said, hey, how about this road? And you bring that to the governing officials and you say, hey, how about this road? And they say, yeah, that'd be a cool road. And then you get to proceed through all of the planning. Now, in 30, 40 years ago, that was a process that took about 3 weeks, and now it takes like 4 years. So it's been stretched out, and it's in the process. But you take it from that concept stage through design and then through construction, and to me, that was always the rewarding part, was seeing in construction the projects that you designed. I always enjoyed that more than anything else.
So the private sector and then the government that you worked, you said the projects go from conception and then all the other steps. How different was it going from the private sector to being on the government side?
It was radical difference in certain ways, and in other ways I brought a new perspective, I think, to the staff, the engineering staff, or the public works staff, I should say, because we had so many different divisions at that time. The department was maintenance and traffic and transportation, and you did drainage and roads, and all of that was one department, and now it's been divided into 3 departments. But I think my experience gave me a broader view of all of those things, whereas internally in the government, everybody has their niche that they've been in probably since they started. And so, recognizing those skill sets that they have and trying to promote them stepping out of their little world and interacting with the other departments and the other parts of the world around them, I think that's what I could bring to the department. Whereas they were more, we called it silos at that time. Okay. Everybody was working in their silo. But if you can tear down the silos and work together as a team, across agencies, across disciplines, you end up with a better product. And I always just felt like after only 2.5 years of doing that, I was just really getting started doing that. And so I wish that it could have worked out different. I was supposed to do it for like 12 years,
Wow.
Yeah,
so it was a
cool.
big adjustment going from only the 3,
yes.
and you were thinking you were going to be longer?
Oh, yeah. Because there's so much in public works at that time. I forgot the numbers on the size of the budget and the number of people, but I had something like 350 people working for me.
It was 335 people.
There you go.
And then it was $58 million.
Yeah, there you go. So you read my resume.
I did. Because it was impressive. It was a lot.
Well, But you see, prior to that, though, I was just a small businessman. I mean, I had a small company at the time. I think I sold out to my partner. Dale bought the company out, and we were only like 10 people. And at one time, we were 30 or 40, and our influence was bigger because we would hire sub-consultants to do things, and so our impact was substantial in that regard. But it was a big change going from that size company, and then we're having total control over how things happened, and then you move into a government position as a public works director, and there's a lot of rules to follow. You have civil service governing your professionals and your staff, your people, and then you have to be able to conform to all regulations and all standards that govern the works that you do. It was interesting.
We're learning standards and regulation governance just in our senior design project, so I can imagine.
Well, yeah, that's a key part of your job as a civil engineer, as your career. We'll be doing that. So.
Okay, well, that was great. So what do you think that engineering interns should be expected to act or behave or be expected as far as work whenever they become interns?
Well, the funny answer would be, do as you're told. But in reality, you're becoming the newest and probably the youngest member of a team. And the team will have multiple tasks and projects assigned to your team. And so your role is to be as proactive as you can in displaying your willingness to learn what's being done, how to do what's being done, and to do what's being done. And so a lot of it is self-driven, and it's going to be incumbent on you to step up and say, hey, I'm available, I want to learn how to do that. But that's not unlike anything else the rest of your career. The personalities that come in with the concept that I want to learn, I want to get better at what I do, I want to know everything there is to know about this current task in front of me, and then do it. That's the people who are successful.
And that's the same mindset you have after you get hired also.
Absolutely. And I think your challenge to get hired in that sort of concept is to get that across to whoever's interviewing you. And to me, that's the key. I always felt like I could train any good engineering student to do anything if they were receptive and excited about it.
Teachable.
And teachable, that's right. It's all about attitude.
How do you think that engineers contribute to making the world a cleaner or safer place or more effective?
Well, professional engineers have an ethical code that we agree to when we become professionals to safeguard life, health, and property, and to promote the well-being of society. And so theoretically, everything we do should have those goals in mind, or standards in their mind, of how does my work affect those key elements of our responsibility. And I think that our culture, especially in the design profession, our culture has trained us to do that, and that it's foremost in most consulting civil applications. It's kind of foremost in your thought processes. But as I think our innate characteristics as engineers is creating from where there's nothing something that benefits other people, and I think that's almost universal as engineers, and maybe why we become engineers.
So, do you think it's super important for students to be involved in clubs when they join school, like to be working towards entering Chi Epsilon or joining ASCE and things of that nature?
I absolutely think that that's important, because the only way that you can grow as an engineer is to interact with other engineers, other technical people, other political people. It's about interactions. And so those clubs and organizations enhance your opportunities to build your circle of influence, being your circle of who influences you. If you think of your knowledge base or anything in your life as a sphere, you can only grow by absorbing what's adjacent to the sphere. And the advantage to that is that the bigger the sphere gets, the more you have that you can learn and absorb. And so that should be your thought in saying, in broadening your horizons. And you can take the analogy a little bit step further. is that if you have a sphere, you don't want it to get all lopsided on one end. So you want to broaden your horizons.
That is a really good analogy. Thank you for
interesting.
that. Yes. So, what do you think the benefits of being licensed engineer are, and what possible paths could you do if you weren't a licensed engineer?
Well, your greatest advantage as an engineer, being trained as an engineer, is that theoretically, if you've done a good job of being educated and educating yourself, is that you have a skill set to solve problems. And so that can be transmitted to any profession, any job. I always felt like I could have done anything if I had to. If somebody said you needed to do mechanical engineering, I'd have been able to figure out how to do that because I was trained to solve problems. A lot of what you do professionally comes from that ability, not so much that you learned something in college that it's going to teach you how to design drainage systems. Well, you may learn the basic calculations of how to design a drainage system, but you're not going to know the nuances of how to do that professionally. So professionally, think of it this way. Would you want to go to a physician that went to medical school, but he didn't get licensed? You know, so a license is sort of the final step of saying, I have committed my life to training for this job and to this career, and here is my credential that shows that I did that. And it's a step you have to go through. You have to prepare for the test, you have to study, you have to know essential items of information about your profession. And so the license itself is a display of that accomplishment. I wholeheartedly think that every engineering student should pursue their professional degree in one field or another. You can get jobs in engineering that don't require license. Some firms are happy to have you on as an engineer and you're not licensed, but you'll never get to the quote-unquote next level. Right. You have exemptions for licensure in industry. So you could go to work for an industrial plant and you can have a very successful monetary career. But if you were doing the same performance and you had the license, I think your esteem amongst your peers would be a little bit higher. And so I think there's always a value to being licensed as opposed to not being licensed.
Yes, I know here at UL Lafayette our professors stress the license, especially in our last semester.
Yeah.
So I know whenever I was a freshman, I looked up on YouTube, like, what's the daily activities, a day in the life of a civil engineer? So would you be able to tell us about that?
Well, I think we heard the previous interview. He said there is no 2 days alike. No, you can't really describe a typical day because there's no typical day. Engineering is such a broad field, and there's so many opportunities for you to pursue, and all of those individuals' days would be different, and each one of their days for themselves would be different than the day before. You're going to have days where you're grinding out a project and you're going to go in and you're going to do drainage calculations, and then you're going to translate that into construction plans for a drainage system. And it's going to be 2 or 3 days of just calculation. It might be 2 or 3 days of just microstation CAD work or whatever. And then you get higher up and you get to be a public works director, and you don't do any more calculations, and you don't do any design work. You just manage the people that work for you. And in that role, you as a manager, you're just trying to give the people that rely on you for leadership the tools that they need and the opportunities that they need to accomplish their work.
So I know some students that are in civil engineering say that they don't want to stay behind a desk all day, that they like to be out in the field. So would you say that field engineers, they're actually in the field a lot, or are they in the field more than what we might perceive that they are?
Well, it just depends on the permutation of employment that you get to experience, that you earn that job and you get that job. So if you're a person that wants to be out half the time, well, there's the jobs in construction management that would probably serve that. You may not do much design, but you would be implementing other people's designs into physical reality. And so if that's what gets you excited and once that's what you want to do, then to go for that. Design work is going to be largely indoors kind of work. And it'll depend on the company. I think the company that I'm with now, it's more or less compartmentalized, where you get people doing design, then you have other people doing the field management, and so you don't have you don't do both.
Right.
In my smaller company, because we were small and you did everything, and so you designed it, and like I said earlier, you were in the conception stage, and then you designed it, and then you put it into plans and specs, and then you managed it for the client in construction, and so you got to experience a lot of that. And that permutation of probably our project managers were probably 15-20% in the field.
Okay,
Just
so
kind of a
definitely
yes.
not behind a desk all day
All the
long.
time.
But like you said, every day is different. So,
Yeah.
right. So, what are some typical areas that a company would have for an engineer to promote or grow?
Well, every job that you ever take is going to have its own potentials for advancement. I think naturally, just because of the nature of the beast, a large company is going to offer you more opportunities. With that said, a 5-man firm, you come in as the young stud, and you go get it, and then you might be the heir apparent and become the next president of that company. It's really about your own attitude and your own wherewithal to learn, and your ability to implement designs and whatever the task at hand is. And so it's very much a function of your own accomplishments as you go forward. I think literally every company offers opportunities for that. But a larger company is going to provide you more opportunities. It's kind of like being a consultant. I would have had more opportunities in a bigger market. But I personally put my values in our community as a place, and sadly all of my children left town, but I always valued our community to a very high degree. I had opportunities as a young man to go to Houston, to go to Atlanta for employment, and I chose to stay in Lafayette. And then I experienced a great personal tragedy that I would have never wanted to do that in a big city. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think my love of my community came through for me and my family. And so that's what you have to do as a young engineer. Finding a job is kind of no different than finding a relationship, and that you begin your search trying to find the match, mm-hmm. and then you spend just as much time after the match to make sure that it continues to grow and develop, yes. and make it into what you want it to be.
That is good.
Yeah.
So do you think that whenever you worked for your dad's company, had a lot of room to grow or promote?
Yes. Now at times as a young engineer, I said, oh my God, this is a dead end. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't, and I don't think it ever truly is. And so you can't get cornered into your own limited exposure, your own limited thinking. Mm-hmm. You have to expand your vision and say, well, what are the priorities of my corporate leadership? What are we trying to accomplish at the corporate level? And then you say, what can I do as an individual in the company to make that happen? Now, some companies are better at identifying that than others. I think Fenstermaker has very clear-cut goals for growth and their mission statements to do good work, and so I think that kind of makes it easier for young engineers maybe to grasp, hey, this is what we're trying to do. But you can get sidetracked in your thinking, mm-hmm. and just stagnate. So it's up to you as an individual to stay vibrant and to stay engaged in it.
Okay, so do you think your dad's company also is the company that inspired you to become a civil engineer?
Yes, I absolutely know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was like your dad's dad a civil engineer?
No,
or?
my dad's dad was a policeman in Bunkie, Louisiana.
Okay.
And my dad came from very unaccomplished, plain old country folk, and He went to UL, and Dad's still alive and is one of the most inspirational engineers I ever worked for. He was truly, I mean, I always said he could have done any engineering, architecture. He's a gifted sculptor. He's an amazing man. But I always, you know, they always say the best thing I ever did was work for my dad, and the worst thing I ever did was work for my dad.
Right.
Because it brings a whole set of challenges.
So what do you advise someone who doesn't know what field they want to be in for civil engineering when they're applying for jobs?
That's a hard one, and I think one of the things that makes it challenging is that there's so many opportunities out there. It's so many options out there. Is how do you even know at age 21 or 22 what the heck you want to do the rest of your life? And the answer is you don't. And so you have to experience some of that to a degree. Now you can experience it by your own jobs that you take and experience directly. And nowadays you can do online research. I would, recommend reading the Civil Engineering magazine put out by ASCE. You read those articles and you see what other people are doing, and you'd say, hey, tunnel design, that's cool. Now, can you go to that company that designed that and say, hey, I want to be a tunnel engineer? Well, you may or may not be successful in convincing them of that. But then you could say, let me come in as I've got some experience in drainage design. Let me come in as a drainage guy, and then I'll transfer to the tunnel department. Being a little glib there, but it's kind of like dating, or building a relationship. Sometimes you gotta date a few people before you marry one.
Right.
So you gotta work a couple of places before you find a place.
It's appropriate to go with one company and be a hydraulics designing engineer and then go to another company and do transportation? Well,
it just depends on your own knowledge and your own ability to absorb knowledge. And then you've got the other aspect of selling the people that would be doing the hiring, that you can make that transition. I think it's a good place in a larger company where you can more easily move from department to department, or maybe not even move, just say, hey, let me help out on that hydrology project. There's a lot of cross-pollination in our organization at Fenstermaker that people get to do that. I consider myself a generalist. I'd be like a general practitioner as a physician, in the sense that I never did a lot of anything, but I did a lot of everything, or I should say I did a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. But you have to have the skill and the talent, I think, to be able to interact with a discipline or another field and learn enough about that field to be able to talk proficiently with people in that field. It's nice to be an expert. It's nice to be able to know a bunch of experts and use their knowledge to put together a big project and make something happen.
So you did say that you used your surveying that you learned from your dad's company. It was helpful for when you were in school. Yeah. And I know, especially coming from high school, a lot of students are like, well, I'm never going to use this in school. And so when they get in college, they still have that mindset, some of them. So what do you think, the subjects the most that they should be fluent in for?
That's a challenging question for me, because I really am not familiar with your curriculum as it's being given to you in your college career. So I can't be specific about that. Hopefully your education is giving you a basic understanding of several different fields. I always use drainage and highway design as separate things, and then you can throw in sanitary and water treatment, and you should be getting exposed to a little bit of all of that. There's no way that what is your curriculum now, 130 hours, credit hours, something like that? you're just not going to be able to become proficient at any given one because you're only going to spend a semester or two on any given thing. Hopefully that you're going to get some understanding of which agencies might govern that. You know, like you've got the American Water Works Association provides information for water design. AASHTO is the go-to for highway design. NRCS is the drainage stuff. So you want to know where is the guidance coming from? Where are the laws being implemented? You got to know who you're working for. So if you're working for DOTD projects, you need to know the DOTD standards. But hopefully you're getting some inkling of that. But truly your training begins when you walk out of your college and into the world of application. Now that may be college, you may stay in the academia, and that's a wonderful career. So the thing about civil engineering is we have something for everybody, we just don't all have everything for everybody. So you have to go out and seek it. You know, and so you need to be introspective about it to some degree. Try to find moments where in your quiet time, you think about what do you really enjoy doing? Which of your classes intrigued you?
Yes.
But that was what I was going to say about the ASCE magazine, is that you'll see some fabulous projects, but there's a whole industry behind that development of that project. So if you see something that, hey, I really would like to know what that's about, well, then start doing some research. Ask some questions. Come to the old guy down the hall.
Yes. So with that, what do you think is your favorite part of, okay, so you've had a lot of jobs. So your job right now, what is your favorite part of this job?
My favorite part of my job now is interacting with the younger engineers. And actually, in the engineering department, there's only 2 older than me, so they're all younger. I think we had a little gathering before lunch, and I think there was probably 50 people in there, maybe more. And they were all younger than me, but I always enjoy being able to work with them to some degree, to maybe give them another perspective of how to approach a design problem, and maybe it's not design, maybe it's just how to promote your project or whatever you're working on. I wish they were more comfortable just coming in my door and asking me stuff, but hopefully that'll grow as I become more enmeshed in their day-to-day stuff with the quality control aspect of it.
So as a younger engineer, what was your favorite part of the job?
My favorite part of the job was always seeing it built, and so I always hold my hat on Camellia Boulevard between College Saloon and Vero as just a wonderful roadway extension project that was super. We did a lot of widening projects when we widened College Saloon Road, later on widened Vero School Road. Those are all really great projects, and so that's fun. As a owner of a company, though, I always went to bed comfortable knowing that I had provided for my staff the challenges and the tasks and the opportunities for them to make a good living for them and their families. And so I think as a small business owner and as a large business owner, I think there's a great satisfaction in that. So those are all good positive things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And we thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you at the Engineering and Technology Expo.